Okay, so the Bounce Back program began in October. We were talking about resilience in October. In November, we talked about mindfulness. Last month in December, we talked about self-care. These months were really like resource heavy. Like we were talking about things that we can do to build more resilience. And resilience is a theme that's going on throughout this whole project. Mindfulness and self-care are things that we do. With January, our topic is purpose, and it's a ginormous topic, but it's also New Year, and there's fresh energy available for like forward motion. And I would like for us to start thinking about the long game of what our purpose is in what we're doing here in dentistry and oral health. 2020, the entire year, like it was a lot. Like it felt like, I said this last month too, but it felt like we were responding to like emergencies every day, and there wasn't a lot of time for forward motion because we were just responding to things. But we have to keep going, and in order to do that, I think that finding purpose or getting clear about what our purpose is will be helpful for this year. We in this group have one central goal or a central value, and that's oral health and oral health justice. There's so much work to do in change, and we are continuing to respond to everyday changes, and I think that here at the coalition we have the one goal in mind of just like trying to push forward social change for oral health and for oral health justice. Since there's so much work to do, it can be overwhelming, and also burnout is likely. So the point or the purpose of today is to talk about our purpose. And to do that, I'm using a framework for social justice work that was developed by a woman named Deepa Iyer. The original concept that I'm going to present was developed in 2018. She made an infographic that was called the Social Change Ecosystem Map. And it has evolved a little bit in the last couple of years, but she developed specific roles that people play inside social change systems. So today we'll talk about what these 10 roles are and try them on and see maybe where we fit. The map is a description of roles. Like some of the examples are visionary or frontline responder, builder, stuff like that. And they act as archetypes or like personalities or characters that we like play in these systems that we work in. The exercise will help us individually figure out how to contribute to the big picture or the long game. What's going to happen for the next years to come. And it will also if we're new to social change environments, this will help us figure out like where to start or what we're naturally good at. It also aims to encourage us to think about what our roles are, what they are, and what they could be, what roles we might play in this new environment. The tool is, or it's a tool to help us like also structure the work. So these are roles that we play, but it helps us think about like what needs to be done. For example, one of the roles is storyteller. And that was one of the roles that I don't always like think about why it's important in social change work or why it's important in like forward motion. Storytelling is super important because it helps us understand what's happening and then like respond. And more to say about storytelling later, but Normally in this process, there are 3 parts. You first identify your cause, then you map your roles, and then reflect and observe and plan. So, but in this group, we have a common cause, like I mentioned, oral health. In 2021 and beyond, how do we move toward oral health equity, liberation, justice, and solidarity for all? Since our common cause is oral health, I would like for us to hold space and think about our roles inside the systems that we work in the presentation today. So I'll go over each of the 10 roles. And then at the end, we'll also complete some writing prompts to help us figure out where we fit. And there'll be a couple times for you to reflect and write. So if you don't have something already, grab a paper and a pen, and we'll get started with the presentation right now. Whoops. All right, can I just have a thumbs up that we're still good with? Okay, cool, thanks. This month's topic is purpose. This is the person that created the ecosystem, the social change ecosystem map. This is Deepa Iyer. She's author of We Too Sing America, host of Solidarity Is This podcast, the senior advisor at Building Movement Project, and I'll share these links. She's a South Asian American activist and lawyer. And the graphic was originally just created in 2018, and now it has evolved into more the Building Movement Project. The website has all sorts of resources. Again, I will share this with everybody, but the other cool thing about her work is that specifically with this social change ecosystem map, she has developed a toolkit and released it to the public saying this can be used in your organizations. She does have some boundaries about how to share the work. So one of the things that she's asked is that she's just credited every time that it's used, and I've done that on each of these slides. But I liked that this was something that was delivered to the community to be used and shared. This is the social change ecosystem map. These are the 10 roles. First one is weaver, experimenter, frontline responder, visionary, builder, caregiver, disruptor, healer, storyteller, and guide. These are all equally important parts of how social change happens. These are all roles that are really important, and not all people are good or interested in or wanting to do each of these roles. And so it's important to just remember that there are some things that we are good at naturally and some things that we aren't, some things that we're interested in, some things that we're not, and it's there's no judgment about it. All of these parts are very, very important. She has written I statements for each of the roles, and I think it's the best way to just kind of understand what each of the roles are. So we'll start with weaver. As I'm going through these statements, just be thinking about what feels like a match to you when I read it. So if you're thinking about, think about work environments that you've been in or social environments that you've been in. What do you end up doing usually? What do you end up, where are you comfortable acting? What role are you comfortable acting in? Just begin thinking about that, and we'll go through these 10 roles, and then there's several prompts and writing prompts to kind of explore that. A weaver is somebody that sees the through lines of connectivity between people, places, organizations, ideas, and movements. So a weaver might be like, I know this person that's doing that, and this person that's doing that. I feel like they could collaborate together, or like I should help connect those two ideas. A weaver might also weave ideas together, like this group is saying this group is saying that. There feels like there's disconnect there, or there feels like there's match there. A weaver kind of sees the things and helps make the connections, not just between people, but even like places or movements or organizations. An experimenter. I innovate, pioneer, and invent. I take risks and course correct as needed. Experimenters in spaces, and also let's keep the oral health context and it just kind of in our minds. So when we're talking about like the first part of this exercise is to identify your core values or identify your core mission. And we've already done that in our group because our core values and our core mission is oral health and oral health justice. So an experimenter in oral health or oral health justice is somebody that's doing new things, pioneering new ways, inventing new maybe ways to deliver dental care, innovating new paths to getting there. In today's world, we need to innovate and invent new ways of doing stuff because everything's different. We are all at home, and dental care still needs to happen. So what are we doing to like pioneer the new way and innovate and invent stuff that's new and that will respond to the current environment, the current real environment that we have? This is also an experimenter is also somebody that course corrects. So like you try a hypothesis and it works or it doesn't work, and then you change it and then you try it again. A frontline responder. I address community crises by marshaling and organizing resources, networks, and messages. A frontline responder is like doing the work on the ground in the context of dentistry or oral health. A frontline responder is our clinical folks that are doing the work in mouths, in the offices, in the community, in the safety net organizations. Visionary. I imagine and generate our boldest possibilities, hopes and dreams, and remind us of our direction. Visionaries are envisioning the future world. They're thinking about, ideal situations. What would we have, or what could it look like? What could it look like, or what do I see happening in the future? We need visionaries because, and these roles are different. Like the visionary is picturing the things, and the experimenter is trying the things, and the storyteller, we haven't gone over this yet, but the storyteller is telling the stories. But the visionary is picturing it and is able to picture it and has like future mindset about what might be, and also responding to the call for the community call for what needs to be. So a visionary is like listening to the dreams of others and trying to picture how that might happen. Keeping us also focused on what the future is, or keeping us focused on the ideal possibility of the future. Keeping that in mind so that we don't lose sight of that like ideal picture. Builder. I develop, organize, and implement ideas, practices, people, and resources in a service of collective vision. So a builder is different than a visionary. A builder is, developing and putting into tangible reality the whatever it is that they're building. Organizing is really, really important, and if we only envision the future without building and trying things, it doesn't happen, right? Caregiver. I nurture and nourish the people around me by creating and sustaining a community of care, joy, and connection. I liked that this statement had the words joy and connection. Like, we think caregiver, we think somebody that's, giving care, like nourishing people, feeding people, loving on people, but also like creating and sustaining joy is part of a caregiver's role. So like, how do we create joy? How do we sustain joy? Especially, how do we do that now? Like, how do we create joy now in this environment? How do we nourish joy now? How do we nourish connection and connection with each other when it's really hard, like right now? Disruptor. This one's my favorite. I take uncomfortable and risky actions to shake up the status quo, to raise awareness, and to build power. This is like, these are people that are it's different than experimenter, because it's like experimenter is trying a hypothesis and seeing how it goes, and then like course correcting and doing something different. A disruptor is always just kind of like trying to shake stuff up. Like, what if we did it this way? Or like somebody says something and then it's like opposite, to consider all the things. A disruptor is really important because it like shakes up what has been for a really long time. And it's risky to do that because, status quo is like safe and comfortable. And so disrupting that, or disrupting long history of how it's been, is difficult to do, is risky to do, but also like super important, because if we don't do that, then it stays how it's been for a while. Disruptors raise awareness and help give new flavor to what has always been. A healer. I recognize and tend to the generational and current traumas caused by oppressive systems, institutions, policies, and practices. So I like this definition also because when we think healer, we think just like, what is a healer's responsibility in a social change environment? In the oral health world, we think about healer probably as like a clinical person or somebody doing the physical work. I think it's also important for us to consider and keep in mind that there are oppressive systems inside every system, inside healthcare, inside dentistry. And so the healer's role in this context is to help us recognize the traumas, the current traumas, and the historical traumas that have occurred, so that we can recognize, look at, see it, and go forth with that knowledge. Storyteller. I craft and share our community stories, cultures, experiences, histories, and possibilities through art, music, media, and movement. I love that storytelling includes the word movement here. And I'm picturing like visual dance and all of these like creative expressions about what is happening, what has happened, and what we're doing now. We have this like great opportunity to do things right now, and to storytell like what we're doing. We did a little bit of this at our at the annual conference just last month, where we were we did like a video at the beginning of the conference where different organizations made like a short video at the beginning, and they were just talking a little bit about like what their organization is doing to respond to COVID-19. So this is an example of storytelling, important piece that that in social change environments where we are talking about what's happening and talking about yeah, just like the stories about what we're encountering in the world, and those stories then are shared, and people are inspired or motivated to do something similar or different, or maybe there's, every time we tell a story, somebody else might resonate with that, to do something for themselves or different in their organization. And storytelling is also how we make connections with others in order to give more momentum to the other things that are happening. Guide. I teach, counsel, and advise using my gifts of well-earned discernment and wisdom. So a guide is giving advice, teaching other people how to do stuff, teaching specific tools about how to manage things. Discernment is really important, and the word wisdom, to know if you're leading other people or you're advising other people or counseling others, important to use discernment so you're not, you know, spreading things that aren't helpful, and you know, wisdom to know, I want to say wisdom to know the difference, like the Serenity Prayer. Okay, so those are the 10 roles. I'm going to pause for just a minute so that we can look at this and think about just like what's your like your first gut reaction to like where you think your roles have been in your worlds. So maybe just think about like what roles you play in, I mean, you can think about it in work, in your family, in social circles. Do you tend to be a builder? Do you tend to be a caregiver? Are you most comfortable as like a frontline responder? Are you interested in history telling or storytelling? Are you a weaver? Are you somebody that helps to make connections between things? Do you like to experiment with ideas? Just look at this a little bit, and then the prompts will help you also but begin thinking about that. And then the central spoke in the middle, put oral health on top of that. So oral health equity, oral health liberation, oral health justice, oral health solidarity. Solidarity being just like seeing others as us. How do we stay focused on oral health justice in these roles? Okay, so the first question, this is like how to identify your values. So what are you seeking to change in oral health? What needs to change in oral health? Is it a system of power, a mindset? Are we changing a mindset? Are we Like that's always what I'm thinking about with oral health, is like we still have to work on the mindset of the collective, that oral health isn't as important as overall health, or that it's somehow separate from the rest of the body. So what are we seeking to change? You can also write in a particular issue. So this first question has to do with like, what is your main thing? We already know what our main thing is, and that's oral health. But this question is asking us to respond or think about a crisis that calls us to take action, like COVID-19, or solidarity with Black communities, or campaign to center immigrants, etc. All of that is relevant in oral health. COVID-19, super relevant. Solidarity with Black communities, yes. Campaign to center immigrants, all relevant in our world and important to think about. All right, so this is the first one to kind of write about. Looking at the ecosystem map, which roles do you find yourself playing most frequently? What do you do most of the time? And recognize that you can be playing multiple roles, and that these roles can even shift depending on the context. So just maybe write down like 2 or 3 that you feel like roles that you play frequently. We'll go back to those I statements too. You'll have a graphic with all of the I statements so that you can kind of remember what each of the roles stand for or say. This next one is 2-part question. And I have the I statements up. Okay, the first part is, what roles do you feel comfortable and natural playing, and why? So what comes to you easy, and why does it come to you easy? That's the first part of the question. The second part is, what roles make you come alive and why? And you can think about like an instance where you've played one of these roles and it just made you feel really good, or it made you feel really useful. It might not be something that is natural or that you even fall into that often, but think about some roles, a role or two that really gives you energy, makes you come alive, and try to think about why. Why does that make you feel alive? And then once you've done that, try to look at those 2 answers, like, what do I do naturally? And then what makes me come alive? They might be the same thing. You might be naturally good at something and it gives you a lot of juice to do that thing, but it also might not be the same. Something that comes natural might not be really fulfilling to you, or something that is really fulfilling might be really difficult to do. So are there differences between your responses that give you an opportunity to explore that? And the why is kind of important. So like if I feel alive when I have the opportunity to storytell, but it's like really hard, then I can begin thinking about what kind of support I need in order to get more role opportunity to storytell. Think about too, like the things that are natural to you. Why are they natural? Is it just because you've been like kind of pigeonholed into those roles, or is it because that's what's comfortable and natural? Um, and how might you stretch yourself? The next question is about what the impact of playing these roles takes out on us. So what is the impact of playing these roles on you? Physically, energetically, emotionally, or spiritually? So when you're playing a role, pick one that you've kind of been writing about. When you're acting in that role, what is the impact on you? What's the impact on your body? Like what happens to your body when you're frontline responding? What happens to your body when you're caregiving? What is the impact energetically? So if you're disrupting the status quo, what happens to you energetically? What happens to others around you energetically? What's the impact emotionally? If you're healing, if you're a healer, and you're working to evaluate the historical traumas that have occurred in this country, what happens to you emotionally when you're doing that a lot? And spiritually, what happens? The second part of this question is what/who sustains you? So you can think about people, you can think about practices that sustain you. We, in our past months with this project, have talked a lot about self-care and things like meditation. If those things are helpful, you could list those and things that sustain you, but also think about your people. Who sustains you? Who in your organization helps lift you up? We're talking about the impact of playing the roles. So when there is adverse impact, what helps you get your juice back? What helps you get your tank filled again? This can also be like spiritual practice. So like what sustains you in the spirit worlds, or like what do you call on spiritually to help you go through the hard things? I have the I statements up again so that you can be reminded about the roles. How do your roles connect to your privilege and power? For example, there are roles where you might be, are there roles where you might be taking too much space or not enough? This is a question about, you know, this is a map or a framework for social change and social justice. So when we're talking about privilege and power, we're talking about access to privilege and access to power inside systems. So to recognize our privilege and recognize our power inside these systems is to just know where we're at with stuff, and to recognize if we're taking too much space, meaning are there other voices that need to be heard in this space that aren't being heard right now? And how do I leverage my privilege and power to make sure that these voices are heard? It's also possible that we're not taking enough space, which means that if our voice or our perspective needs to be heard, just thinking about like when it's important for us to say something, or to not speak in a moment where there's other voices or other perspectives that need to be heard. There's several roles in here where privilege plays a big part. And the way that things are delivered are sometimes dependent on like who is saying them, or what position of power is saying the things. Okay, and I think this is one of the last prompts. This question is, what story emerges about you when you review the map and your reflections? So looking back on what we've just talked about and written about, what is the narrative that you're telling yourself right now? What is the story that emerges about you that you're saying about yourself right now? So we've looked at the roles, we've kind of experimented like with where do I play, or where do I fit? Where do I naturally go? Where do I want to be? What kind of role do I want to be in? There might be a story that's emerging about, it could be like a false narrative that's like, I never do this, or I always do that, or I'm like this, or, you know, so just notice like what you're telling yourself right now about what your role is, what your roles are. Is it accurate? Is what you're telling about yourself like, I only do this, or I can't do that? Is there a narrative that's coming into your mind right now about what you should do, shouldn't do, what you can do, can't do, what you're uncomfortable doing, what you like doing? There might be a statement like, I'm no good at doing this, even though I want to do that. Or I feel like I've been a builder my whole life, but I'm not good at it. Or I wish I could connect with people, or I wish I could connect people in this way, but I can't do it. Or other people are better at doing this than I am. You know, whatever the narrative is, just try to get it out. And it could just be like false narratives that you're, or like anxiety that's coming up. How could you stretch yourself in these roles? So here's the I statements again. Where could you take bolder risks? Are there any roles that are like scary or intimidating to you? What would it be like to stretch yourself and try on some of these roles? Or like how might you be a weaver? Um, if you're interested in doing frontline response, what could that look like? Could that be like mutual aid, helping out, coordinating efforts to put supplies together for folks? Or um, where could you take some bolder risks? This is a paragraph that is in the toolkit that Deepa Iyer developed, and I loved the language, and I just wanted to read this this paragraph to us. Social change can be fulfilling, but it can also be draining at times. It's natural to feel burnout and fatigue. People who have been subjected to generations of oppression carry trauma that shows up in behaviors and responses. And in times of crisis, we can cycle through fogginess, exhaustion, and numbness. All of these responses are normal, natural. We can also learn more about their roots and triggers and build sustainability plans to tend to ourselves and each other. I love this because it's real. Social change and forward motion with social change and systems change is fulfilling, can be fulfilling, and it is also super draining and really hard work. And so that's natural to feel burnout and fatigue, and important to recognize that people have been subjected to oppression for generations, and that shows up in lots of ways, and that if we can understand that those responses are natural, a natural outcome of living in an oppressive system, then we can learn to recognize it and notice the roots of it, and build plans to tend to ourselves and the entire community with all those things in mind. So I love that, and I think that's the end. Yes, I'm going to stop sharing and bring us back together for discussion.
I just